Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 598, The Heir's Honest Hour, words with a silent H, intermediate. A story incorporating words which are pronounced with a silent H. Arthur was the unlikely heir to Blackwood Manor. It was a crumbling, ancient house, and local legend said a mournful ghost roamed its halls at night. Arthur had never believed in such things, but the terms of the will were very clear. He must spend 1 whole hour in the manor's library at midnight to claim his inheritance. His late great-uncle, a man of great honor, had set this test to ensure his legacy passed to someone equally worthy and honest. On the chosen night, a cool mist hung in the air. Arthur drove his old vehicle slowly up the gravel driveway. The manor loomed before him, a dark shape against the moonless sky. He found the library easily, a dusty room filled with books and strange objects. In one corner, there was a small locked cabinet. On top of it, a single potted herb sat on a stand, its leaves brittle and dry. He had heard his uncle talk about this specific exhibit before, a rare plant he had collected on his travels. The clock on the wall began to tick towards midnight. Arthur sat down, his heart beating a little faster despite his calm exterior. The wind howled outside, sounding like a whisper. Then, at the stroke of 12, the clock chimed, and a faint light began to flicker in the air. A shape slowly formed. It was the ghost from the stories. It pointed a translucent finger towards the locked cabinet. But Arthur was a practical man. He noticed the flickering wasn't from a spirit, but a small lantern behind a cleverly hidden pane of glass. The ghosts were simply a projection, a brilliant and elaborate trick. A smile came to his face as he remembered his uncle's words, "The most honorable man is one who doesn't hide from the truth, no matter how scary it seems." He looked at the lantern, then at the herb, and then at the lock. He saw a small key hanging on a hook hidden behind the potted plant. His uncle's test wasn't about being brave, but about being clever enough to find the real answer, and honest enough to admit it wasn't a ghost at all. He unlocked the cabinet, revealing a letter and the deeds to the manor. The letter read, "The man who proves to be truly honest will not be fooled by a mere light show." Arthur left the manor just before dawn, the deed safely in his pocket. He had passed the test. Vocabulary notes. Heir. Definition: an heir is a person who is legally entitled to receive the property or title of another person when that person dies. The H at the beginning of this word is silent. Example: Arthur was the unlikely heir to Blackwood Manor. This shows that Arthur was the person who would inherit the house and everything that came with it. Similar words: successor, inheritor, beneficiary. Honor. Definition: honor means a strong sense of what is morally right. It is a quality of living by high moral standards. The H at the beginning of this word is silent. Example: his late great-uncle, a man of great honor, had set this test. This means the great-uncle was a person who was well respected for his integrity and good character. Similar words: integrity, virtue, dignity. Honest. Definition: to be honest means to be truthful and sincere. It also means to be fair and free from deceit. The H at the beginning of this word is silent. Example: to ensure his legacy passed to someone equally worthy and honest. Here, the word describes a person who can be trusted and who tells the truth. Similar words: truthful, trustworthy, frank, genuine. Vehicle. Definition: a vehicle is a machine, usually with wheels and an engine, used for transporting people or goods on land. The H at the beginning of this word is silent. Example: Arthur drove his old vehicle slowly up the gravel driveway. In this case, the vehicle is a car that Arthur uses to drive to the manor. Similar words: automobile, car, Conveyance, transport. Exhibit. Definition: an exhibit is an item or a collection of items on public display in a museum or at an exhibition. The H at the beginning of this word is silent. Example: he had heard his uncle talk about this specific exhibit before. The potted herb was a specific item that was on display for others to see in the library. Similar words: display, specimen, artifact, object. Story written by Gemini Pro AI. Image created by 1minute.ai. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, drifting at 432 Hz, unicorn heads.
All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into this really clever short story. And it's not just a good story. It's also a fantastic lesson on some of those super tricky words in English. You know the ones. So, let's get right to it.
Let's kick things off with this powerful idea, a quote that's actually from the story. It really is the heart of everything we're about to see, and it perfectly sets the stage for well, let's just say a very unusual test. Definitely keep this one in the back of your mind. Okay, so let's meet our guy, Arthur. He's just found out he's the unlikely heir to this place called Blackwood Manor. And it's exactly what you'd picture. Old, kind of spooky, maybe even haunted. But here's the catch. To actually get his inheritance, he has to complete this really bizarre challenge laid out in his great-uncle's will. So, this whole test was the brainchild of his late great-uncle. And this uncle, he was a man known for his incredible honor. He wasn't just looking to hand off a dusty old house. No, he wanted to make sure his entire legacy went to someone who was genuinely worthy. And the one thing he cared about most? Honesty. Now, before we see how Arthur handles all this, we need to pause the story for a second. Because this challenge isn't just about facing down ghosts, right? It's a puzzle. And it's a puzzle built around language. To really get it, we need to look at 5 specific words that all have this one weird thing in common. A silent H. First up is heir. Easy enough, right? That's Arthur. He's the guy who's supposed to inherit the whole shebang. Next, we have honor. And this is everything. This quality is the whole reason the test even exists. The great-uncle was a man of immense honor, and he expected nothing less from whoever came after him. And that brings us to honest. See, this is the real target. The uncle wasn't necessarily looking for the bravest person, but the most honest one. Someone committed to seeing the truth. This is the key that unlocks the whole mystery.
Okay, number 4, vehicle. It's a bit of a formal word, right? But it's used in the story to talk about the car Arthur drives to get to the manor.
And you can just picture it, can't you? His old, maybe slightly beat-up vehicle chugging up this long, creepy driveway with the spooky manor waiting at the top. The word just fits that whole gothic vibe perfectly. And our final word is exhibit. So inside the library, there's this weird little thing on display, a rare kind of dried-up plant his uncle brought back from some trip. It's not just sitting there, it's presented like an exhibit. And trust me, it's going to be a very important clue. All right, so we've got our key words down. Let's get back to Arthur. Picture it. He's all alone in this massive, dusty library. The clock on the wall is ticking, getting closer and closer to midnight. So he's looking around, and his eyes land on 2 things. A locked cabinet, and right there on top of it, that weird exhibit we just mentioned, that dry potted herb. And then it happens. The clock strikes 12. Suddenly, this faint light starts flickering in the corner of the room. It grows and takes shape until there it is. A ghost. A classic, spooky ghost, just like in the old stories about the manor. And it lifts its hand and points right at that cabinet. But here's the thing about Arthur. He's a pretty practical guy. He's not really the type to just believe in ghosts. So instead of screaming and running, he just watches. He doesn't panic, he thinks. And pretty quickly, he figures it out. This isn't some spirit from beyond the grave. The light, it's just a little lantern hidden behind a pane of glass to create a projection. A trick. This whole thing wasn't a test of his courage, it was a test of his perception. Could he see what was really there? And that's the absolute key to this whole thing. Arthur passes the test, but not because he was some brave ghost hunter. He passed because he was smart enough and, more importantly, honest enough with himself to see the illusion for what it was. So instead of letting fear take over, he just followed the logic. He saw the lantern trick. That made him look closer at the whole setup. His eyes went back to that potted herb, that exhibit. And tucked right behind it, he finds a tiny key. And there's only one thing to do with a key, right? Unlock the cabinet.
So he opens it up, and what's inside? It's not gold or jewels, it's something way better. The actual deeds to Blackwood Manor. And a letter, the final piece of the puzzle, straight from his great-uncle.
And the letter explains it all. The uncle basically says that a truly honest person won't be fooled by a simple trick, a mere light show. See? The whole thing was a setup to find someone who valued truth and perception, not just someone with guts.
And because Arthur saw the truth, because he didn't buy into the illusion, he proved he was exactly the person his uncle was looking for, an honest and therefore an honorable heir.
Which brings us right back to that quote from the beginning. Arthur didn't run from the scary ghost. He looked right at it, figured it out, and found the truth. And that's the big lesson here. True honor isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing to face reality, no matter what it looks like.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What really tests who we are? Is it being brave when something is scary? Or is it being honest when it might be easier to just believe a convenient lie? It's a tough one. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.